As a DJ or musician, it's very important that we capture our artistry, especially in 2022. Today, I want to show you two cameras that I started out with that are under $2,000. Let's get into this. What's up, guys? Shay Sean Fan. I'm McPherson, back to you with another Gear and Gadgets, where I like to go over gear and gadgets for musicians and DJs alike. But today, I want to talk about something that I use to capture myself. And most likely, if you're a DJ or a musician in 2022, you want to be a content creator. And as a content creator, you might want to think which camera you want to use. So I just wanted to show you guys the two cameras that I have and how I use them and which one I got first. So the first camera I got was a Fuji Xt3. And I loved it. This camera came out in 2018. It had 4K 60. It had 10-bit color profiles. It had two card slots. It was really a great camera, and I love the lenses that you got on it. And the other camera I have is a Sony A7C, and that's what's taping me right now. The A7C is amazing because it's a really small, full-frame camera. It brought me into the Sony lineup. I just got this Sony in this past summer in 2021 because I wanted a full-frame camera with better autofocus. I wanted to compare these two cameras for you so you can maybe make a decision. The Xt3 is from 2018, it's almost 4 years old, and it's $1,000 now. When it first came out, it was all the rave. That's why I went to it. I love the color science. I love the Eterna profile. The only real complaints that I have for that Fujifilm Xt3 is that the battery life sucks. It didn't have a flip out screen. And that was about it. I mean, 4K 120 wasn't even a thing for these type of cameras back then. They didn't have a big lens selection, and some of their lenses was, slower because they were more made for photography. The Sony A7C is great because it's almost the same size as my Fujifilm, and I could put in my pocket and I could trust its autofocus, and its battery life was better. So let's get into the differences between these two cameras and maybe which one you would want to get. So I put the Xt3, the Sony A7C, the Xt4, and the A7 IV just to show you four cameras that are out right now. The Xt3 and the A7C and their successors, the Xt4 and the A7 IV. So the major difference between the Fuji and the Sonys is that the Sony is full frame, so it gives you a better depth of field. Of course, they have different lens mounts, the E mount versus the X mount. And the X mount is an APS-C sensor, which gives you a crop of 1.5, so it's a little bit smaller than the full frame. So right here, as far as video, we get into the meat and potatoes of it. And if you look at the Xt3, you'll see it's at H.265. And I feel it's a little misleading that they don't show that the Xt3 shoots in 10-bit 420, just like the Sony A7 IV. It's just that it's not full frame. And I believe they do that so you go buy, a more expensive Xt4 for $1,500, or you feel like you gotta get the Sony A7 IV. But the Xt3 at almost $1,000, you can get 10-bit codec. That 10-bit codec, it comes in so handy when color correcting, and that's the one thing that the Sony A7C doesn't have. It's 8-bit, so when you're messing with the color and the luminance, it tends to fall apart quicker than on the old Xt3. Another thing about both of them is if you get a Ninja external recorder, the Xt3 then goes up to 422, and The Sony A7C goes up to 422, but in 8-bit. So that's stuff to keep in mind when purchasing these two cameras. So I wrote down some pros and cons for both the Fuji Xt3 and the Sony A7C. For the Fuji, the Pro, it has dual card slots. It can record in H.265. It can record in 10-bit internally 420. It can record at 60 frames per second, which is great for slow motion. And it's cheaper. It's, $10.99 without a lens. Some of the cons of the Xt3, the autofocus is shaky. It's decent, but it's nowhere near what the Sony is. The battery life is horrible, so I end up using an Anker battery to power it, and that can get you through the day. But, it's like another thing, a dongle hanging from the camera. Its lenses, for not being a full frame camera, its lenses are still kind of expensive, so that can be seen as a con. And it's not a full frame camera, so it doesn't have that depth of field and the crazy bokeh behind you. But the lenses are still good and they made very well. It's just a notch under what the full frame cameras can do. And the camera is kind of old. It's 5 years old. So for some people, that can be a turnoff. Now for the Sony A7C, the pros, it's a compact full frame camera, which is great. I've used it in my pocket. I've used it vlogging in the street with a smaller lens. It has a great battery, so it can last a whole day of shooting. It has great autofocus and eye detection. It has that full frame look, the look that a lot of people like on YouTube. And it's great in low light, and Sony cameras in general known for their low light power. Some of the cons of the Sony A7C is that its lenses are full frame lenses, which are big and expensive. It only has one card slot. So if something goes wrong with that card when you're taping, you can lose everything and not have a backup. So it might not be the best for client work. It's only 8-bit, so you can only mess with the colors, but so much. It only shoots at 30 frames per second, which means you don't get the 4K slow motion. And its viewfinder is kind of like small, and a lot of people complain about it. I don't really mind it too much, but it's definitely not as good as the Xt3's viewfinder. So those are some of the pros and cons that I've noticed while having both cameras. Another thing about the Sony, it does have in-body stabilization, which the Xt3 has none. So it's definitely going to beat it there as well. The Sony also has a flip-out screen, so you can see yourself as you're recording. Very good for a one-man show. The Xt3 does not have that option, unless you get the Ninja.
If I had to pick a camera in 2022 and in my budget was underneath $2,000, which one out of these two that I have that I can talk about would I get? Well, if it was my first camera, I might consider the Fujifilm still, because the Fujifilm can give you that 4K 60, and as a musician, I really need that 4K 60 for music videos, slow-mo, and for products. That 4K 60 is really nice. That being said, the A7C, if you know that you're going to want Sony, maybe a A7S3, FX3 in the future, the A7C might be the way to go. You can definitely get by with this camera with its full frame features, and the battery life is great. It has a flip out screen, and you can take it. It's kind of portable. The lenses are going to cost more, and if you try to color correct, it'll fall apart before the Fuji will. But if you know you just want really rock solid
autofocus and nobody's going to be behind the camera for you holding it. See, when I do it, I'll hand my Fujifilm to somebody, or I'll take my own B footage as long as I'm not in it. But if I need to be in the shots or vlog, I rely on the A7C a little bit more. I mean, the Xt4 is better. It has a flip out screen. It has good battery life. But the autofocus is still a little wonky on that. But you might be able to get by with the Xt4 as well, but it's not full frame. And the lens is going to cost more on the A7C. So those are things to consider. I'm definitely happy that I have the Xt3. You can get 2 Xt3s for the new Sony A7 IV. So it's a lot to consider. I'm kind of happy where I'm at right now. The next camera I really want is the A7 III, if I can start to generate money with this channel. But that's me. Let me know what you think down in the comments.